What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's my transfer tips for game week 3. So I'm going to go through some of the popular players people are looking at bringing in and taking out of their squads and give my opinion on who's the best options to go for. So let's get into it. So I think a lot of people will be looking for a new forward this week, primarily in and around the 7.5 million price point. The two most popular are Joao Pedro and Chris Wood, both of whom went up in price last night. So Joao Pedro is now 7.6, Chris Wood is 7.7. We shouldn't discount Mateta though. He's 7.5, so the cheapest of the three. And actually, the next 6 game weeks for Crystal Palace don't look that bad. So who's the best one to go for? Joao Pedro, I like, but I do think that if we were sat here after game week 1, 72nd minute substitution and no returns, things would look a little bit different than after West Ham, where he's absolutely smashed it with 3 attacking returns. For me, a lot of how much I rate Joao Pedro as a pick probably comes down to Cole Palmer. Because if he's out for a while, Joao Pedro's minutes go right up. He'll probably play that number 10 position primarily, and if he doesn't, we know he's first choice number 9 as well. And if Palmer's out, someone else has got to take penalties. Now, my money would probably be on Enzo Fernandez, but Joao Pedro might get them. So all of a sudden, if Cole Palmer's out for like 4 to 6 weeks, Joao Pedro, a great option, and might even become my favourite of the 3. But if Palmer's fine, I still think Joao Pedro is also fine as a pick, but you're going to have those games like game week 1, where he doesn't have any returns and he does get subbed early. Out of these 3 players right now, Joao Pedro's minutes are the one that I would be slightly more concerned about. Also, the fixture run is fine for Chelsea, but like you got Man United away in game week 5, could be difficult-ish. Liverpool at home in game week 7, although right now Liverpool look quite open, so it might not be the worst time to have to play them. But overall, I think the fixture run is fine, but not amazing. I think the fixtures for both Wood and Mateta are slightly better. Some of this might come down to when you're free hitting as well. So if you're free hitting in game week 4 because you don't have Salah and you want to get him in, Chris Wood is probably the best option. You get West Ham at home this week. You can dodge the Arsenal away fixture in game week 4 on your free hit. Then you got Burnley away and Sunderland at home. So next 4 game weeks would look amazing. On the other hand, if you've got Salah and you're thinking about free hitting in 6, maybe Mateta becomes the best option. Because when you look at the next 2, Mateta's Villa away, Sunderland at home. For Chris Wood, it's West Ham at home, which is great. Then Arsenal away, which is not so great. Then in game week 5, Chris Wood has got Burnley away, which is really good. But Mateta's got West Ham away. And again, it's not the worst time to be playing them. And then you free hit in 6, so you can get Wood in for Sunderland at home anyway, and you can take Mateta out. And then after game week 6, Wood's got Newcastle away and Chelsea at home, which is a bit more difficult. Mateta's got Everton away and Bournemouth at home, which looks better. So I don't want to sit here on completely on the fence and just say it's really close call, but I genuinely think it is. I think my least favourite pick right now is Joao Pedro until I know more about Cole Palmer. It's not that he's a bad option. I know I haven't had him in any drafts in pre-season. He's absolutely smashed it in game week 2, but I still just don't think he's quite as good as that ownership suggests, and I could be absolutely massively wrong about that. And then Wood and Mateta probably will come down to if you're free hitting or not in 4 or 6. If you're not using your free hit or you've already used it in game week 2, it's a much tougher call. Both of these players have got penalties. With Crystal Palace, obviously they've lost Eze, so that's going to have an effect on their attack, but they're probably going to sign someone. Who that is and how well they'll do straight away, we don't know. So there's maybe question marks over Crystal Palace. Chris Wood's minutes look really good, but they have signed new forwards. So will that continue to be good, his minutes that is, once Europe starts? It's hard to know, right? Whereas Mateta's already had a European game and still kind of played close to 90 minutes straight afterwards. So I'm a little bit torn. I quite like Mateta. I think the fixtures over the next 6 just look a little bit better than both the other 2. But also I'm probably going to free hit in 6. So I get rid of the Liverpool fixture. If I was looking shorter term, like next 4, I think it would be Chris Wood. Ultimately, I probably prefer Mateta and Wood over Joao Pedro, and it'll be Joao Pedro that does the best. It's a really close call. They're all decent picks. And actually, I can see a situation where people move to a structure where they've got two of these forwards longer term. So speaking of forwards, Jarrod Bowen, 2 game weeks, 2 blanks, dropped from 8 to 7.9 million. Not a great start for him. Next 3 fixtures are Forest away, Spurs at home, Crystal Palace at home. I think with Bowen, if you're looking to sell him to one of those 3 forwards I've just mentioned in particular, completely understand that. I think that's more than a reasonable transfer. It's not been a great start for him. It's just not been a great start for West Ham either. And I'm not convinced that Graham Potter is going to turn that around anytime soon. So if you want to sell Bowen, I get it. I will say, though, I don't think he's an absolute must-sell. I think any player that has been consistent in the past, that is always going to start, always going to play 90, you don't have to force them out of your team. What I mean by that is if you're sat there with someone like Bukayo Saka who's injured, out for game week 3, possibly game week 4 as well, that is more important. I wouldn't then be at the stage where I'm thinking I've got to get rid of Bowen for a hit. But obviously, if you've got a second transfer and you want to use it on Bowen, that seems fine. The reason I say he's not a must sell is because of that consistency, but also the next 3 weeks are just not that bad. Like Forest away, Spurs at home, Palace at home, it's not the perfect next 3 fixtures, but given that 2 are at home, it's not terrible either. So if you want to sell him and you've got a spare transfer, I get it, and I'd probably be thinking the same. But he's not a must sell. I still stand by that. Let's talk about Florian Wirtz next. I see his situation as quite similar to Joao Bowen. So the first 2 game weeks have not been great whatsoever. No goals, no assists, and he hasn't really looked like getting any attack and returns either. And he's dropped in price from 8.5 to 8.4 million. So if people want to sell him before he plays Arsenal at home, which is a difficult fixture, I think that's completely reasonable. And I'll talk about replacements in just a minute. But I also still don't see him as a must sell. He started the first 2 games. He's got past 80 minutes in both of them. I don't see why that won't continue against Arsenal. And if you do keep him for that match, the fixtures are actually pretty good after that, at least for the next 2. It's Burnley away and Everton at home. I've seen some people say to me, I'm going to give him one more chance against Arsenal and then that's it. If he doesn't return, he's going. But that's not realistic. If you get to game week 4 and Wirtz is still in your team, you can't sell him before Burnley away unless you've got serious concerns about his minutes, which I don't think you can have right now. Now, some people are still talking about him potentially getting benched. There was some talk about that before the Newcastle game. In the end, McAllister wasn't available and Szoboszlai had to play right back, so Wirtz was never going to get benched. If McAllister is back this week and Bradley is fit enough to start, there is maybe some concern that he could go with a Gravenberch, McAllister and Szoboszlai midfield. I just find it really hard to believe that you spend over 100 million on a player, you got a huge game against Arsenal and you don't use him. Like maybe because Arne Slot has got lots of credit in the bank because of last season, etc. Maybe he can say to Wirtz, I'm just going to leave you out for this one. You'll be straight back in game week 4 against Burnley away. I just don't think he gets benched. I don't think that's the likely thing that happens. Again, like last week, I won't say the chance is 0, but I think it's a very small chance it actually happens. So I think he's going to start against Arsenal. And I think we've got to be careful about not completely writing players off. Some people go from one extreme to another. Wirtz is absolutely essential. Now he's completely written off. Whereas realistically, he's probably somewhere in the middle. I think when you play number 10 for Liverpool, you're going to find it difficult to not eventually get returns. And that could happen against Arsenal, if not against Burnley. But I still think it's also reasonable to sell. And if you're sat there with a setup like me, for example, where you've got Wirtz and a 6 or a 6.5 million forward, the temptation to drop Wirtz down to someone cheaper, where there is lots of options, and upgrade that forward to a Joao Pedro or Chris Wood with 2 free transfers, I completely get it. So I'm not saying you have to keep him, but I do see it similar to Jarrod Bowen, where if you've got other stuff to deal with, Wirtz is not a major problem yet, but I am losing faith pretty quickly because he is very involved in what Liverpool do. I just wish he was more involved in the final third, like in and around the penalty box. But writing him off after 2 games just feels crazy to me. He came with so much hype. He's playing in arguably the best team in the league. The returns will come. Will they come against Arsenal? That's going to be difficult. But like I said, if you keep him for this game, you're definitely keeping him for game week 4 as well. So if you are looking for a new midfielder this week, potentially to replace Wirtz or Palmer or Saka or someone else, there's a ton of options you can look at depending on how much money you want to spend. So let's just talk through some of them. Cunha, I quite like at 8 million, especially if you're looking for a 1-week punt, potentially even as a captain option against Burnley at home. Like Haaland's got Brighton away this week, Salah's got Arsenal at home. Neither are terrible, but if you're going to go against them, this is the kind of week to do it. And obviously Burnley at home on paper is a great fixture. Cunha started number 9 against Fulham in game week 2. Not guaranteed to do that again in game week 3, but if he doesn't play there, he'll play number 10. We know he likes to play centrally. Dorgu provides the width on the left side, so Cunha can always come inside. Whereas on the right, with Mbeumo and Diallo playing right wing back, sometimes Diallo will occupy those more central spaces and Mbeumo will provide the width. At least that's what we're kind of seeing from the first 2 games. It's dangerous to draw a conclusion from 2 games. It might be that Mbeumo is the better option and he is taking some set pieces as well. But if I was taking a punt, I would go for Cunha right now. Just bear in mind that afterwards it's Man City away and Chelsea at home, which is not great. In 6 and 7, it's Brentford away and Sunderland at home, which is better. But 4 and 5 are not great after Burnley at home. But for a 1-week punt, he looks really good. I really like Semenyo at 7.2. I know a lot of people were looking at Anthony Gordon. Unfortunately, he went and got himself sent off last night. He's going to miss 3 games. There's no way that suspension gets reduced. So Semenyo at 7.2 is definitely worth looking at. Loves to shoot, always gets chances, always starts, always plays, or at least mostly plays close to 90 minutes each game. I love this kind of player. And the fixture on next 6 is Spurs away, Brighton at home, Newcastle at home, Leeds away, then Fulham at home, Palace away. So he's the kind of player that if you buy this week, until you wildcard, or unless he gets injured, you're probably just leaving him in for the next 6 weeks and just not worrying about him whatsoever. So he's a really nice price at 7.2. If you want to go a bit cheaper, 6.5, my favourite 2 options right now are probably Sarr at Crystal Palace and then Kudus from Spurs. I've already talked about Crystal Palace's fixtures with Mateta. Outside of Liverpool at home in 6, they're pretty good for the next 6 game weeks. And we know he's pretty much nailed to start in that team. The only player they're going to buy probably is to replace Eze. So Sarr's minutes are not in question, and he's a massive differential at less than 5% ownership. Kudus was super popular in game week 1, continues to be as well. He's gone up to 6.6 million. He's 29.8% owned. His minutes right now look really good. He's averaged 85 minutes per start in the first 2. Spurs fixtures are also really good. And we know that he's basically the Mbermo in this team for Thomas Frank. Spurs are looking, or have been looking, for a new winger. That might impact his minutes a little bit. Now, my gut feeling is if they buy a new winger, it'll be mostly to replace Brennan Johnson, and Kudus will continue to start. But if Brennan Johnson gets put on the bench, he's then a sub for anyone that started, and he can play all across the front 3. And arguably his best position's on the right, not the left. So if they sign a new winger, it's not necessarily to stop Kudus being in the 11, but it might mean his minutes go down slightly. So I do like Kudus as a pick, but I still want to see what happens in the transfer window to get a better idea of whether his minutes will continue to be good afterwards. Plus, they're going to have Europe and stuff like that to contend with soon, although so are Crystal Palace. But I just think Sarr's minutes are not in question whatsoever. But honestly, Kudus look pretty good. The goal threat is not really there, which I've kind of come to expect from him. That could change, but we know he's going to get assists. Spurs are looking strong as well. I think Thomas Frank is impressed in the first 2 games. There's every reason to still like Kudus, even though his ownership is super high. If you want to go even cheaper, Tielemans at Aston Villa, good fixtures for the next 5 in particular. He's always going to start. It is a little bit worrying that he's kind of started as a number 10 in the first 2 fixtures, and his underlying stats have been awful. And when he plays in that position, he's less likely to get defensive contributions. But overall, he's always going to start. He will get some attacking returns, and he will get the odd defensive contribution. So he's kind of that player that's like got to be a set and forget that you know sometimes is going to blank, and it's going to be frustrating because he's not going to look like returning, but he will get you. I'm not even sure I would say consistent returns, but enough to warrant the price, I would say. But honestly, if you can spend the extra 0.5, I much prefer Sarr or Kudus. And of course, if you don't already own Reinders, he's still 5.7, so less than 6 million for a Man City player. We have seen in Game Week 2 he's capable of blanking. I did break it to you in Game Week 1 that he wasn't always going to get a 10-pointer. But honestly, the fixtures are not bad, and he's a good price point. And arguably, he's a better option than Tielemans for 0.3 less. So I think between the two, it's quite close. But Reinders I'd probably prefer. The thing that might make me go Tielemans if I was spending 6 million is just the fixtures. Like, Reinders against Man United at home in Game Week 4. City will probably be fine in that game, but it's the kind of game that Man United get up for, and then it's Arsenal away in 5. So it's probably closer than it looks, but I think when you save the money, Reinders is probably the one. But if you can spend it, 6.5 million on Sarr and Kudus is probably the sweet spot. You've also got Morgan Rogers at 7 million, although at this point I think more people are selling him than buying him. If you are someone that went with him in Game Week 1, obviously it's not been a great start, a bit like with Fernandes and Wirtz and Palmer and Joao, Bowen, etc. And the whole list of popular players that have just not done well. But I don't see any need to rush him out. A bit like Ollie Watkins. The fixtures are still good. Palace at home, Everton away next 2. Then Sunderland away, Fulham at home, Burnley at home. I don't think it's great that Tielemans is playing 10 and Rogers is having to play wide. We know he can return from that position, but it is better for us if he's central. But I wouldn't panic just yet. The fixtures are still good. Yes, Villa, first 2 game weeks, have not been great. Right? I think that's fair to say. I don't think anyone would disagree with that, even Aston Villa fans. But we know what Rogers is capable of, and we know the fixtures are there. So if I got him, I wouldn't be looking to sell him personally. Yes, there's good players I've just mentioned like Semenyo, Sarr, Kudus, but would I say they're miles better than Rogers and worth a transfer? Absolutely not. Would I bring him in right now? For 7 million, it's still a good price, but I would find it difficult probably right this second to buy him over like a Sarr or a Kudus. I'd rather just save the money to be used elsewhere, maybe to put into my defence or something like that. I wouldn't say he's a bad option to buy, but I think given what we've seen so far, and again, it is only 2 games, we shouldn't draw massive conclusions. I'd probably rather save the money. So if you're looking for a new midfielder, absolutely consider Rodgers, but I'd probably spend a little bit less money and go for one of those other 2 players. But if you've got him, I think for most people, it's got to be a hold. So another 6.5 million midfielder you can consider is Jack Grealish. Got his first start for Everton at the weekend, played 89 minutes and picked up 2 assists. So a nice return for anyone that went there early. Would I look to bring him in this week? Probably not. Not because I think he's a terrible option, but because I think there's better options at 6.5, basically. Or close enough to that price in Kudus at 6.6 and Sarr at 6.5 as well. You look at the next 3 fixtures. For Sarr, it's Villa away, Sunderland at home, West Ham away. That is better than what Grealish has. Wolves away, Villa at home, Liverpool away. That Liverpool fixture just not ideal. Then after that, to be fair, it's West Ham at home and Palace at home, which is pretty good. But then it's Man City away. So if you're looking over the next 6, 4 of the fixtures are okay. But for Spurs, they've got a pretty good next 6 fixtures in general. And with Sarr, you've got better short-term fixtures. So that is why I just don't see myself looking at Grealish right now. Also, there has to be some scepticism about what his consistency will look like. Obviously, didn't play very much for Man City last year. We're all hoping it's that Jack Grealish from Aston Villa, lots of goals, lots of assists. But over his career, he's never scored a huge amount of goals. It's mostly been those assists, and goals are worth more. And I think that's what Sarr and maybe even Kudus might end up offering you. So I think in general, what Everton are building is actually quite exciting. Like Dewsbury Hall's an upgrade in their midfield. They've just got Dibbling. They've got Njai. They've brought Grealish in. Barry up front could be a talent, you know, if he gets more minutes over the next few weeks as well. If that all gels together, it will look pretty good. But I think there, like I said, has to be some scepticism about what Grealish will do individually and how many goals Everton will end up scoring. But I will say 4 of the next 6 are fine. I just think Liverpool away and City away would put me off enough just to look at Kudus or Sarr at the same price point. So Spurs attackers are really popular this week. I've already mentioned Kudus and Brennan Johnson in this video, but we've also got Richarlison to talk about as well, who's now gone up to 6.7 million. Kudus is 6.6 and Brennan Johnson is 7. Personally, the only one on this list I would consider is Kudus. I just think that Spurs have been looking for a new winger, as I've already mentioned, and I think they will get one before the window shuts. And if that happens, that just puts more threat to Brennan Johnson's minutes. And I think Brennan Johnson's really good for FPL when he starts because he has got that knack for scoring goals. You can see from the first 2 matches, his expected goals per 90 is 0.51. He always arrives on the back post, right? He's always got those tapping goals in his locker, which are great. It's what you want from an FPL player, but you also want them on the pitch. His minutes per start first 2 is 79, and I can just see that. Maybe his minutes per start won't go down, but I think his number of starts could be affected if they sign someone else. So if you strongly want Brennan Johnson, just wait until at least Saturday morning to try and make that move, just to see if Spurs sign anyone. But the transfer window is open till Monday, 7 p.m. So they could sign someone after the Game Week 3 deadline. So Brennan Johnson, I'm not as sure about his minutes as I am with Kudus. If I wanted a Spurs midfielder, that is where I would look. And then with Richarlison, we know what Thomas Frank said last week, that right now he's his starting number 9, but that can change. Right, his minutes per start so far are 74. At some point, he's going to get benched for Solanke. If Richarlison can keep this up and play as well as he's done in the first 2 for the next 6, maybe he just keeps his place long term. But I just think he's not so good that you've got to take that risk. Solanke's a really good player. He will be first choice at some point. I'm pretty confident in that. And I just think, okay, to be fair, below 7 million, there's not many forward options. Like Strand Larsen, there's speculation about whether he might leave Wolves soon. You know, he might end up being a good option if he goes to Newcastle, but that will depend on who else they've got for that number 9 role. And then 6 million or below, like Fulkrug, Barry, Thiago, etc., not that exciting. So maybe for like a short-term move, game weeks 3, 4, maybe Richarlison at 6.7 is fine. But I'm pretty confident if you ask any Spurs fans about long-term starts and minutes, Solanke's just way too much of a threat. So Spurs looking strong. The fixtures are good. Thomas Frank's had a good start. There's reason to want to bring their attackers in. But in my opinion, the only one to look at right now is probably Kudus. If you've enjoyed that video and found it useful, make sure to give it a like. Hit that subscribe button as well. And I'll be back tomorrow for the Game Week preview.